7-year-old Ethan Wallace didn't ask for much. He had a few shelves filled with mismatched toys from garage sales, a creaky bunk bed he'd never shared with anyone, and a heart too big for his small frame. His world had once been fuller before. The accident took his dad away. Since then, the little house he lived in with his mom had grown quieter, the days a little longer and the nights a little colder. But Ethan never complained. He smiled when his mom, Maggie, brought home microwavable mac and cheese after a long shift. He made up stories to entertain himself when she worked late at the diner. And every evening before bed, he'd glance at the photo on his nightstand, his dad holding him as a baby, and whisper, "Good night, Daddy." There was only one thing Ethan ever truly wished for: a dog. His dad had promised him one on his 7th birthday. "We'll go to the shelter," his father had said, "and you can pick whichever pup you want. That'll be our family dog." But 2 months before that birthday, everything changed. A drunk driver ran a red light, and in the span of seconds, Ethan's world collapsed. Since then, Maggie did her best. She picked up double shifts and extra cleaning jobs. She gave Ethan second-hand clothes, old books, and whatever toys she could find at thrift stores. But a dog? That felt impossible. They could barely afford groceries, let alone vet bills or dog food. Still, Ethan held on to hope. Every day on the way to school, he'd stop to pet the neighborhood dogs through fences. He memorized breeds, read about training tips, and even saved a tiny jar labeled Puppy Fund, with coins he found in couch cushions. But the jar never got more than halfway full. Then came the day everything changed. It was a Wednesday afternoon, just after sunset, when Ethan and Maggie walked home from the grocery store. A biting wind rustled through the trees, carrying the ghee scent of winter in the air. Maggie held one heavy bag in each arm. Ethan trotted beside her, clutching a box of cereal. As they passed the edge of the local park, Ethan froze. "Mom, look!" Under an old metal bench, barely visible in the dim light, lay a small trembling dog. Its fur was tangled and muddy, ribs visibly poking through its sides. One front paw was lifted awkwardly, as if it hurt too much to touch the ground. Its eyes, though tired and guarded, locked onto Ethan's. There was something in them. Fear. Maybe, or desperation. Ethan crouched slowly, careful not to scare it. "Hey, buddy," he whispered, reaching his hand out. The dog didn't move. It only watched, breathing shallowly. Maggie came closer, setting down the bags. "Ethan, don't touch it. It could be sick." "But he's hurt," Ethan said. "We can't just leave him here." Maggie sighed. Every instinct told her no. This was a stray. It was risky. But the look on her son's face, so full of quiet, pleading determination, made her pause. "We'll bring him home for tonight, but just tonight, okay? We'll figure out what to do tomorrow." Ethan nodded quickly. "Okay. Thank you, Mom." He shrugged off his jacket and carefully wrapped the shivering dog in it. The animal whimpered but didn't resist. Maggie picked up the bags again while Ethan cradled the bundle in both arms, as gently as if it were a newborn baby. They walked slowly back home, Ethan whispering soothing words. "You're safe now. We'll take care of you." That night, Ethan named the dog Buddy. He gave up his blanket and pillow, setting them gently on the floor to make Buddy a soft bed. The dog curled up, still too weak to move much, and rested his head on Ethan's hand. As Maggie watched her son gently stroke the dog's fur, she couldn't help but feel a pang in her chest. The boy who had lost so much still had so much love to give, and this was only the beginning. The next morning, Ethan woke up early. The first thing he did was check on Buddy, still curled up at the foot of his bed on the makeshift nest of blankets. The dog's eyes blinked open slowly. He tried to lift his head, but his body trembled, and his front paw remained lifted off the floor. Ethan's face fell. "You're not better yet," he whispered, "but you will be." Maggie walked in carrying toast and eggs. She paused when she saw Buddy still lying motionless. "He didn't eat last night, did he?" "No, he just drank a little water," Ethan said, worry lining his voice. Maggie sighed and knelt to touch the dog gently. Buddy flinched slightly, then relaxed. His body was burning hot. "He's running a fever," she muttered. "I think he's worse than I thought." She looked at Ethan, who was trying hard not to cry. She knew that look. It was the same one he wore when they buried his father. "We'll take him to the vet," she said quietly. Ethan looked up. "Really? We can't let him suffer, sweetheart." Maggie bundled Buddy in an old towel and loaded him into the back seat of the car while Ethan sat beside him, whispering encouragement the whole way. As they drove through town, Ethan kept his hand on Buddy's side, feeling the shallow rise and fall of his weak breathing. The vet clinic sat tucked between a pharmacy and a pet supply store. It was modest, with cracked pavement in the parking lot and faded signage that read, "Dr. Simmons, Animal Care and Wellness." Dr. Harold Simmons, a kind-faced man in his 50s with graying hair and a tired smile, ushered them into a room right away. As soon as he saw Buddy's condition, his expression turned serious. "He's in rough shape," the vet murmured, carefully examining the dog. He gently prodded Buddy's front leg, which made the dog whimper and jerk back. "He's got a fracture here. Could be from a car hit or maybe a fall. He also has signs of infection, probably from being exposed too long. Malnourished, too." Ethan stood beside the exam table, fingers clutched around the strap of his backpack. "Can you fix him?" Dr. Simmons looked at Maggie, then back at Ethan. "Yes, but he'll need x-rays, antibiotics, and surgery to repair the leg. Recovery could take weeks." Maggie felt her heart sink. "How much would that cost?" Dr. Simmons scratched his head, trying to soften the blow. "At least $100 and $200, maybe more if there are complications." Ethan's mouth fell open slightly. Maggie knew instantly there was no way they could afford it. She'd barely paid last month's rent. Just this vet visit alone was already more than she could handle. She gently placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Honey, I'll be right back," Ethan interrupted and turned, slipping out the door without another word. Maggie blinked. "Ethan!" She followed, but he was already gone. Dr. Simmons looked confused. "Is everything all right?" "I don't know," Maggie said. "He's never done that before." 10 minutes later, the exam room door creaked open again. Ethan stepped back in, panting slightly from running. In his arms was a large cardboard box. He must have gone home and come back. He set it down in front of Dr. Simmons. "I brought all my toys," Ethan said, cheeks flushed. "Everything I own. My game, my fire truck, my stuffed animals, even Teddy." On top of the pile was his most prized possession, a worn-out teddy bear with one button eye given to him by his dad when he was a baby. Dr. Simmons looked down at the box in stunned silence. Ethan pulled out a crumpled piece of notebook paper and handed it to him. Written in big wobbly letters were the words, "Please take these. They're all I have. Please help Buddy." Dr. Simmons read it once, then again. He didn't say anything, but his eyes glistened and his lips began to tremble. Dr. Simmons stared at the crumpled note for several long moments. His fingers trembled slightly as he held the paper, and his throat tightened with emotion. He'd been a veterinarian for over 25 years. He'd seen abused animals, tearful, owners and desperate pleas, but never anything quite like this. A little boy no older than 7, offering every toy he owned. For the life of a stray dog. He swallowed hard and glanced up at Ethan. The boy stood stiffly, fists clenched, his eyes wide with anxiety. His cheeks were red from the cold air and from running all the way home and back. But there was something else in his expression, an aching kind of hope. That kind of hope children carry when they still believe that love can fix anything. "Son," Dr. Simmons said gently, setting the note aside, "you don't need to give up your toys. You hear me?" "But I want to," Ethan said softly. "Buddy's more important. He doesn't have anybody, just me." The vet blinked rapidly and turned away under the pretense of checking a chart. He needed a moment. His voice would crack if he said anything too soon. Maggie stood quietly near the door, her hand covering her mouth. She hadn't known Ethan was even thinking of doing something like this. His sacrifice wasn't just sweet, it was staggering. The teddy bear alone had been his comfort through countless nights of grief after his father died. Dr. Simmons turned back, his face composed, but his eyes still moist. "Ethan," he said, kneeling so they were eye level, "you've got more courage and heart than most grown-ups I know. I want you to keep your toys, all of them. You gave me something more valuable than money today." Ethan tilted his head. "What's that?" "Hope," Dr. Simmons said, "and a reminder of why I do this." He stood and took a deep breath. "I'll fix Buddy. I'll cover the costs myself. We'll take good care of him. He'll stay here until he's strong enough to come home with you." Ethan gasped. "You mean it?" "I do, but he's going to need a lot of love and patience." "Think you can handle that?" Ethan nodded so hard his whole body bounced. "Yes, sir." The vet smiled and ruffled Ethan's hair. "Then we've got a deal." Buddy let out a soft whine from the exam table, as if sensing the change in mood. Ethan rushed over and held his paw gently. "You're gonna be okay now," he whispered. "I promise." As Dr. Simmons began preparing the paperwork and calling, Inner veterinary nurse Maggie stepped forward, her voice thick. "Thank you, doctor. I don't even know what to say." Dr. Simmons waved her off kindly. "No thanks needed. That boy of yours. He reminded me why I got into this job. Some people say the world's going cold, but as long as there are kids like Ethan, there's still warmth left." Maggie smiled, brushing away a tear. Before they left, Ethan turned back one last time. "Can I visit Buddy tomorrow?" "You sure can," Dr. Simmons said, "and he'll be waiting." That evening, back home, Ethan sat beside the empty spot, on the floor where Buddy had slept the night before. He placed the teddy bear back on his bed and smiled. "He's gonna be okay, Dad," he whispered to the photo on his nightstand. "I kept my promise for both of us." Outside, the wind howled through the trees. Inside, Ethan felt peace, for the first time in a long while. The next morning, Ethan woke up before the sun rose. He had barely slept, too excited about seeing Buddy again. As soon as he dressed, he packed a small bag, a washcloth to help clean Buddy, a worn toy he thought Buddy might like to chew on, and a peanut butter sandwich wrapped in foil. Maggie smiled as she watched him check everything twice. "You know he won't be able to eat that sandwich just yet, right?" she asked gently. "I know," Ethan said, "but maybe he'll smell it and feel better." It was Saturday, and Maggie didn't have work until the evening shift, so she agreed to take Ethan to the vet clinic after breakfast. He practically bounced in the passenger seat the whole ride. When they arrived, Dr. Simmons was waiting for them with a smile. "Come on in, Ethan. Someone's been whining at the sound of every door opening. He's been waiting for you," Ethan ran inside, and as soon as he entered the exam room, Buddy's ears perked up. The dog was resting on a soft blanket in a crate, an IV drip beside him, and a cast wrapped neatly around his leg. He still looked weak, but his eyes were brighter. "Now, hey, Buddy!" Ethan whispered, kneeling in front of the crate. Buddy gave a low wag of his tail and let out a quiet whine. Ethan reached in and gently scratched behind his ears, just the way Buddy liked. The dog licked Ethan's fingers slowly, his way of saying, "Thank you." Dr. Simmons stood nearby. "His fever's come down and he made it through the night better than expected. The infection is responding to antibiotics. He's not out of the woods yet, but he's a fighter," Ethan beamed. "He's the best dog in the whole world." Maggie took a seat and watched silently as her son talked to the dog for almost an hour, telling him about school, the weather, and a story he had made up the night before. Buddy didn't move much, but he listened, eyes half-lidded with comfort. By the time they left, Ethan was walking a little taller. Every day that week, after school, Maggie took Ethan to the clinic. Each time Buddy looked stronger. He began to sit up on his own, eat soft food, and wag his tail more. The staff at the clinic fell in love with both of them. "He talks to that dog like it's a little brother," one of the vet techs said, watching Ethan gently comb out some matted fur from Buddy's back. "He's not just talking," Dr. Simmons said. "He's healing, and so is the dog." By the second week, Dr. Simmons had even placed a small whiteboard near Buddy's crate that read, "Reserved for Buddy, belongs to Ethan Wallace." One evening, as Maggie drove them home, she glanced at her son. "You've been so good. Ethan, you're taking care of Buddy with everything you've got." He looked down at his hands. "I just wish I could do more," she smiled softly. "You already gave him your toys, your heart, and your time. That's more than most people give anyone." Ethan didn't say anything, but he looked out the window with a quiet determination in his eyes. That night he brought out his piggy bank and dumped every coin into a jar. Then he made a new sign, Buddy Fund, for food, treats, and toys. He placed it on the kitchen table, along with the only birthday card he had ever kept. A handmade one from his dad, which read, "Real love means giving what matters most." The words never left him. Word started to spread around town, not from Ethan but from Dr. Simmons, who told the story at a charity banquet a week later. He spoke with emotion in his voice as he described the little boy who gave up all his toys to save a stray. The story caught fire. First, it reached the ears of the staff at Maggie's diner. Then customers began asking about the little boy with the dog. People started slipping tips into a jar labeled "For Ethan's dog Buddy" at the counter. Some dropped in coins, others dollar bills. One elderly man left a crisp $50 note with a message, "For love, loyalty, and a future vet." Soon, Ethan's school principal called Maggie. "We heard about what Ethan did," she said kindly. "We'd like to share his story at next week's assembly, if you're both okay with that." Maggie hesitated, unsure how Ethan would feel, but when she asked him, his eyes lit up. "Only if I can talk about Buddy," he said. And so, the following Friday, Ethan stood in front of the school auditorium, nervously clutching a photo of Buddy. His small hands trembled, but his voice, though quiet, was steady. "This is my dog, Buddy. He was hurt and alone, and I found him in the park. I gave my toys to the vet so they could help him, but Dr. Simmons didn't want them. He said Buddy was worth more." There was a moment of stillness in the room. "Everyone deserves to be loved," Ethan continued. "Even dogs with broken legs." When he finished, a round of soft applause rose in the air. Some kids clapped slowly, some smiled wide-eyed. A few teachers had to dab their eyes. That evening, Maggie picked Ethan up from school to take him to the vet, like they did every day. But when they arrived, something was different. Outside the clinic stood a small crowd, neighbors, classmates, even customers from the diner. Balloons floated from the mailbox and a banner hung above the door. "Welcome home, Buddy." Ethan's mouth dropped open. Dr. Simmons stepped out, beaming. "He's ready to go home, Ethan." The boy bolted inside. Buddy was already waiting. In the reception room, standing on 3 legs, the fourth wrapped neatly in a fresh red cast. When he saw Ethan, he barked, a real strong bark for the first time. Ethan dropped to his knees as Buddy hobbled forward and threw himself into the boy's arms. "I missed you," Ethan whispered, burying his face into Buddy's neck. "You're really coming home." The crowd clapped and cheered, some taking pictures, others wiping tears. Maggie stood beside Dr. Simmons, stunned by the turnout. "Did you plan all this?" Dr. Simmons shook his head. "Nope. This is what happens when one small heart moves a whole town." That night, Ethan prepared everything. Buddy's blanket was fluffed and waiting, his food bowl filled, and even his name written in block letters on a paper sign taped above his sleeping spot. Before bed, Ethan knelt beside Buddy and placed his teddy bear next to the dog. "You can sleep with him now," he whispered. "He helped me a lot when I was sad. Maybe he'll help you too." Buddy rested his head on the bear and gave a small sigh, eyes closing. From the hallway, Maggie watched, quietly. Her son had grown in ways she hadn't expected. In choosing love over possessions, Ethan had healed a broken dog, and unknowingly started healing himself. That night, for the first time in years, Ethan didn't whisper to his dad's picture, because for the first time, he didn't feel like something was missing. He had Buddy, and Buddy had him. The days that followed were filled with new rhythms. Every morning, Ethan woke up early to walk Buddy, though it was more of a hobble and sniff. Buddy still limped, and his cast made him clumsy. But the way he leaned into Ethan with trust made every awkward step beautiful. The neighborhood began to notice. Older folks walking their poodles or joggers with headphones in would pause to smile at the little boy and his dog. People honked and waved. Buddy, no longer a nameless stray, had become a tiny symbol of something bigger. Kindness, sacrifice, and healing. Dr. Simmons checked in weekly. "The leg's healing well," he told Maggie during a house call. "The cast can come off in 2 more weeks. But I have to say, emotionally, that dog's already recovered." Ethan beamed at Buddy, who was curled up on his blanket, chewing the corner of a squeaky toy someone from town had gifted them. "He's not scared anymore," Ethan said softly. "He knows he's safe." But even as Buddy grew stronger, something else was happening, something Ethan didn't notice at first. One afternoon, while Ethan was playing in the yard with Buddy, a reporter from the local news station showed up. Her name was Karen Meadows, and she had a warm smile and a notebook that she flipped open as she crouched beside Ethan. "I've heard a very special story about you," she said gently. "Mind if we talk?" Maggie came out to the porch, uncertain. But Ethan nodded shyly. He was used to people asking about Buddy now, though he didn't really understand why everyone seemed to care so much. Karen's article ran the next day, titled, "Little Boy Gives Everything for Dog, Teaches Town." What really matters. By evening, Ethan and Buddy were local celebrities, and by the following week their story had gone viral. It started with a few shares on Facebook. Then, a national blog picked it up. By day 3, news channels were reaching out, wanting interviews. Maggie's phone rang non-stop. One morning, Maggie stepped into Ethan's room with wide eyes. "Sweetheart, do you know what YouTube is?" Ethan looked confused. "Kinda? Well," she chuckled nervously, holding out her phone. "You and Buddy are on it. Over 2 million people watched you telling your story at the school assembly." Ethan blinked. 2 million? "Yes," she laughed. "That's like every single person in the whole state of Oregon. Twice." His eyes widened, but then he looked down at Buddy and smiled. "They like him." "They like both of you," she said. Donations began pouring in. Letters from strangers across the country arrived at their doorstep. Some came with dog treats, some with toys, and many with handwritten notes. "Your story made me cry. Thank you for reminding me that good still exists." "You're a hero, Ethan. I hope to be as brave as you someday." "Buddy is lucky, but I think you're lucky too." But perhaps the most surprising of all was a letter from a foundation called Healing Hearts Rescue Initiative. They wanted to feature Ethan and Buddy as ambassadors for a new campaign focused on encouraging pet adoption through empathy and compassion. Maggie read the letter aloud. "They want to invite us to their national event in Denver, all expenses paid, and they want you to speak again, Ethan." Ethan looked uncertain. "Do I have to wear a tie?" Maggie laughed. "I think they'll let that slide." He turned to Buddy, now napping on his teddy bear. "Will he come too?" "He's the guest of honor." Ethan grinned. "Then yeah, I'll go." That night after dinner, Ethan sat down and began writing a letter. He addressed it, "To all the kids like me." It started with, "Even if you don't have much, you can still give love. That's the most powerful thing." And with that, a little boy with nothing but a broken dog and a stuffed bear had started something no one saw coming. The Denver Convention Center buzzed with energy. Rescue groups, veterinarians, animal lovers, and families milled about. Booths set up with colorful banners and photos of adopted pets. In one corner, a large poster featured Ethan and Buddy. The headline in bold, "Love Without Limits, the boy who gave it all for a dog." Ethan stood beside the stage in his neat blue shirt, holding Buddy's leash. The cast was finally off Buddy's leg, and though he still had a slight limp, he moved. With pride now, tail high, ears alert. A new collar with a gold tag reading Buddy Wallace gleamed under the lights. Ethan took a deep breath and looked at Maggie. "What if I mess up?" he whispered. "You won't," she said, squeezing his shoulder. "Just speak from your heart. That's always been more than enough." When the announcer finally introduced him, the young boy who reminded the world how powerful kindness can be, Ethan stepped onto the stage, Buddy trotting beside him. Hundreds of people clapped and lights flashed. He froze for a moment, overwhelmed, but then he looked down at Buddy. Buddy looked up at him, and somehow that was all Ethan needed. He stepped to the microphone and began, voice quiet but clear. "Hi. My name's Ethan and this is Buddy. I found him when he was hurt. People said he probably wouldn't make it. I didn't have money, but I had my toys, and I thought, maybe if I gave everything I loved, someone could help save him." There was a murmur in the crowd, soft gasps, quiet sniffles. Dr. Simmons fixed him. And then the whole town helped, and then people we didn't even know helped. But the truth is, I didn't save Buddy all by myself. He saved me, too. He paused, glancing at the photo of his dad pinned to his shirt. My dad passed away 2 years ago. I stopped talking to people for a while. I stopped smiling. But when I met Buddy, I started feeling again. Because loving something, even if it's a dog, brings your heart back. The room was silent. Then, slowly, the applause began. Gentle at first, then louder, rolling across the hall like a wave. People stood. Cameras clicked. Some wiped tears from their faces. Buddy barked once, proudly. Afterward, people lined up to meet them. Children hugged Ethan. Adults knelt to pet Buddy and whispered how much the story had meant to them. One woman placed a folded letter in Ethan's hand. "My son has autism," she said softly. "He hasn't spoken much in a year. But after we read your story," he said his first full sentence in months. He said, "I want to help a dog like Ethan did." Ethan's eyes widened. He didn't know what to say, so he just smiled and hugged her. That evening, as the convention closed, a woman in a grey suit approached Maggie. "I'm with the Children's Compassion Network," she said. "We help support young leaders who make a difference. We'd like to offer Ethan a small scholarship, not for college just yet, but for any programs or ideas he might want to build around animal care and kindness." Maggie was speechless. Ethan just stared. "You mean I can help more dogs?" The woman smiled. "As many as you want." As they flew home the next morning, Buddy curled up at Ethan's feet on the plane, snoozing peacefully. Maggie looked over. "Do you know how proud your dad would be of you right now?" Ethan leaned against the window, smiling softly. "I think he knows. I think he sent Buddy." Maggie nodded, tears welling in her eyes, because she believed it too. Back home, life settled into a new kind of normal. Buddy's limp slowly faded until it was just a gentle reminder of what they had been through together. Ethan still carried the little card his dad had given him, tucked safely under his pillow. School resumed, but something had changed. Ethan no longer felt invisible or alone. Kids who once ignored him now greeted him with smiles and asked about Buddy. Teachers praised his bravery and kindness. And every afternoon, Buddy waited patiently by the school gates, tail wagging when he saw Ethan. The local shelter invited Ethan and Maggie to speak at events, spreading their message of hope and compassion. Maggie even helped start a small community, fun to care for injured animals, inspired by the generosity that had lifted Buddy's life. One chilly autumn evening, as the sun dipped low, Ethan and Maggie sat on the porch, watching Buddy chase a fallen leaf. Ethan's face glowed with a happiness that felt brand new. "Maggie," he said quietly, "I think Buddy saved me more than I saved him." She smiled and wrapped an arm around him. Sometimes love works both ways. That winter, the Children's Compassion Network contacted Ethan again. They invited him to participate in a youth leadership program, an opportunity to learn how to help animals and communities on a bigger scale. Ethan worked hard, absorbing everything he could. He wrote letters, made videos, and even helped organize a local pet adoption event where several dogs and cats found new homes. One afternoon, while packing Buddy's favorite blanket for a visit to a local animal hospital, Ethan noticed a small envelope tucked inside. It was from Dr. Simmons. Inside was a simple note. "Ethan, your kindness changed everything. Remember, the greatest gift you can give is your heart. Keep giving." Ethan smiled, tears pricking at the corners of his eyes. He looked down at Buddy, who was wagging his tail as if he understood every word. Years passed. Ethan grew up surrounded by love, purpose, and the joy of friendship, with Buddy always by his side. He never forgot the toys he gave up, or the empty nights waiting at the vet clinic. Those moments had been hard, but they had shaped him. One day, when he was a teenager, he volunteered at the shelter full-time. He helped heal broken animals just like Buddy. And when he spoke at events, his story wasn't just about saving one dog. It was about inspiring others to give their love, no matter how small the sacrifice. At home, Buddy's muzzle had grayed, but his eyes remained bright and full of trust. On a quiet evening, Ethan sat beside Buddy's favorite spot in the backyard. He stroked the dog's fur and whispered, "Thank you for teaching me how to love." Buddy leaned in, resting his head on Ethan's lap, content. And in that moment, Ethan understood the truth his dad had tried to teach him all along. Real love isn't about what you have. It's about what you're willing to give. Together, the boy and the dog had found a family, a home, and a heart that would never stop beating for one another. because sometimes the smallest acts of kindness become the greatest stories ever told.